So you're thinking about doing an 8 HP swap in your Resto mod, or heck, for that reason, any car. There's a couple things that you're going to need to know and a couple things that you're going to need before you get started. Stick around. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage. And listen, I am by far not the most knowledgeable person in this 8 HP swap world. There is some great information out there, and you might be surprised to find that a lot of it is overseas. Well, this swap has been going on for a few years in Europe and Australia. It's almost like America is just now catching up, as usual, but for our LS3, we are going with an 8 HP 70 out of a Dodge Challenger. And you might be asking yourself why. Well, for one, they're an 8-speed that's quite a bit smaller than any, transmission that GM offers other than a Turbo 400. They're so small. And I've got it back there, and we'll dive into it more later on. Oh, look at this. Look at this pinout diagram that they've sent with this. But there are a couple things that you're going to need to be aware of when it comes to swapping one of these. One of them is you're going to need adapters. I have gone through Seems Legit Garage for about everything on this project. Those guys have been great. They've been answering questions for me anytime I might ask them, and kind of gave me some guidance along with just searching the internet. I think this box is actually empty. It is. But that being out of the way, let's talk about what all you need in order to facilitate this swap. Well, for one, you need to get the correct transmission. An 8 HP 70, they do make 90s, I believe, that are in the Hellcats. 70s are good for around 700 horsepower, is what they say. There's plenty of people that are running more power than that through them. But before we get into all that stuff, the big thing that you need to be aware of is these things are very unique in the way that they're controlled. They have a TCM just like modern GM transmissions do, but there's two ways of going about how we interact with the TCM. One of them, which is how Max ECU does it, is you take a device, you flash a specific firmware that's been designed by the company that's interfacing with it to make the TCU work with whatever controller that they're working with. As I said, there's a couple integrations that work that way. I can't remember what the other one's called, but I know that's what Max does. The other way to do it is what we're doing, and that is going with the Turbo Lamech. It's in the car. Let me grab it. Oh. Here it is. Turbo Lamech. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is a full standalone TCU. Whenever it comes to running something like that, though, what we end up having to do is open up the transmission, pull the pan, get the filter out of the way, find the TCU, and essentially we just cut the TCU out of the case. And this kit actually comes with a nice board that drops right in place of the TCU for soldering all of the pins that are needed. And essentially what we've done then is we're bypassing the TCU and taking the solenoid control straight out through the harness. And this harness is the one that is pre-set up for an 8 HP transmission. It's got our transmission connector on there. We've got a couple spare connectors. And the only thing that we might have to do some swapping on is the connectors for the Dodge shifter. We're using a Dodge Challenger shifter in this case. But whenever we do it that way, then we have this unit here that has direct control of the solenoids. A lot more flexibility in what this thing can do. You can do trans brake, all the crazy stuff. Change shift points, change shift pressures. You can set up a virtual clutch on this. Paddle shifters, which I've ordered a nice set of paddle shifters. I can't wait. And that's one of the other things. These 8 HP transmissions shift so much faster than a GM style transmission. Some other things to take into consideration. Whenever it comes to this, we've got a couple things that we need. This can do torque calculations, and you really need the torque calculations so it can adjust pressures and stuff to make the shifts better. That's one of the key things. Now, if you have an ECU that has a torque output, you can bring that over on the CAN bus and read it straight from there. And this is the CAN bus harness. We're going to be getting most of the readings that we need straight from the HP Tuner's core into the Turbolamic. So they make an analog one, so if you're running a carbureted setup and you want to put this behind a carbureted engine or something like that, the analog one's going to have like TPS, RPM, things like that. And then it will calculate the torque in the TCU and make the appropriate shift adjustments. The other thing that if you really want these things to succeed is that you need a cut and blip setup in your standalone. Not all standalones are going to support cut and blip as far as I know. You know, the big ones, Haltech, Motec, stuff like that. HP Tuners is working on it for the core currently, so that's probably going to roll out in any update here soon. I don't know that any of the Holleys have cut and blip, but that's what really gives you the fast shifts, being able to either cut power for upshifts or blip the throttle for downshifts. So the best integrations are going to have cut and blip control, talking to the standalone ECU and the TCU, communicating those requirements to each other and saying, hey, I'm getting ready to shift, you know, pull some timing or something, or I'm getting ready to downshift, blip the throttle, kind of like a rev match, and that allows quicker shifts on there. On top of all this stuff, this is kind of the brain side of it. We've got a couple other small things that we need. Now, granted, we need the adapter plate. I've got mine through Seems Legit Garage. There's a couple different companies out there that make them. And then I also got a cross-member adapter because the way that these things were mounted in the Dodges doesn't give us a real good clean spot to mount these. On top of it, there are different coolant adapters. If you're using a Challenger Charger transmission, it is not threaded. We've got this adapter here from HPR. This one actually has a thermostat in it to help warm up the temperatures quicker before it starts running it through the cooler. And I like that the ends swivel. But essentially this is going to go, we'll have some O-rings on here. Boom, there they are. And this mounts to the side of the housing, bolts down right there and holds it in place. Some of them actually have threaded, I think they're MPT threads in there so you can run adapters straight in. But for the Dodge setup, you're going to need some kind of adapter. Now they make an adapter that's cheaper without the thermostat. I went ahead and got the thermostat. I don't know if there's a huge benefit to that, but I did it anyways. The next part that we're looking at is going to be optional, I think. This is a parking brake release, essentially. So these transmissions are electronically shifted through a CAN bus base shifter. Let me grab mine. Here's the shifter that I bought. It's a Dodge Challenger automatic shifter. This will be mounted in the car, and they would have had some kind of cable that came up through the center console that you could pull and pop the transmission into neutral without turning the car on, essentially. So you could roll the car around or load it on a trailer if it was broke down, stuff like that. This replicates that setup, gives you the option to mount this somewhere. I'll probably leave this mounted under the car, hidden somewhere, maybe to the front stub. That way, if I need to roll a car in and out of the garage, I can do it without having to crawl all the way underneath and reach for the lever that's built into the side of transmission housing. On top of it, I don't even know if you'd be strong enough to just grab that thing and twist it. But it comes with all the adapters and mounting brackets needed for that. Okay, here is our new flex plate. Looks more like a flywheel. This is designed to mate up to the Dodge style transmissions, or the 8 HP, I should say, not Dodge style, because they're used in BMW and Maserati and who knows what else. But be aware, and I think this one should be fine because this is a specifically GM 6-bolt to a Dodge Challenger Charger Hellcat 8 HP 70, 8 HP 90, that there might be a different pilot bore because there actually is a snout on the torque converter that has to flushly sit in there. Should be fine if you're using the Dodge. That's what I'm using because it's a rear-wheel drive. They make all-wheel drive transmissions in the Rams and stuff like that that can be used. It takes a little research on that side. Then here is our plate for the back of the engine. As you can see, we're going to add about an inch. So the big question is going to be whether or not we can get this thing in there. There's our top hole. Get this thing in there with the engine position. We may have to scoot the engine position forward a little bit. We're going to see, but very nice piece. Comes out of, I believe, yep, made in Poland, straight out of Poland. So prices might be going up on this stuff. Who knows? With all these crazy tariffs going on. And then, oh yeah, comes with all the hardware. Oh, yep, and in fact, there is a pilot reducer. So if the torque converter has the smaller pilot, it comes with a ring that sits down in your plate to make that work out. So should have everything there. Might be the instructions. You can find the instructions on Adam Matt's website. It did not come with printed instructions. They're fairly simple though. You've got certain length bolts that go in certain spots on the adapters. And then finally, we've got our transmission adapter, the mount. Let's take a look at this. I'm not sure how all this works. So we've got a bracket with a couple holes in there, and then I think this is the main adapter piece. Okay, yep. So they call this the 8 HP Ultraflex. This one specifically for a Dodge Challenger Charger. It's by HPR, the same people that make the temperature setup. I got this one from Seems Legit Garage, just like everything else. I mean, they're a one-stop shop for 8 HP swaps. But this is going to mount somehow onto the back of the Dodge transmission and give us a more standardized mount that'll work with our existing mount, because we've already got an adjustable mount with plenty of room to adjust in there. So we're lucky in that aspect. So the big thing is going to be getting the plate on, getting the flex plate on, getting the adapter plate on, and then getting the transmission mated up. Now listen, I'm not going to videotape that. That's not fun content you guys don't care about. Now, whenever it comes to setting up and wiring the Turbolambic, yes, there will be content around that. This uses Tuner Pro. If you're not familiar, Tuner Pro has been around forever. And the cool thing about it is this essentially works just like an ECU. Tuner Pro, you have a definition, a bin file, and an XDF, which is a definition file that you load up, and it allows you to edit all the parameters in it. It's old school tuning. I think I used it on the Typhoon way back in the day whenever we were talking about chip flash tuning and stuff like that. But it's cool that this has been developed on that platform. So we'll dive into that, look at Tuner Pro, get this set up, and get it connected to our HP Tuners core, and then we'll go from there. So listen, I'm going to get back to working on getting this stuff installed. I've got so much stuff to do. I don't have enough time to videotape all of it, but I'm trying to keep up to date. Make sure you subscribe. If you need tuning help, don't forget to check out the Patreon. It's still up and running, and I guess I'm going to get back to it. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage, and remember, ABT, always be tuning.